Welcome to When Docs Talk.
When docs talk, when docs talk, when docs talk, when docs talk. When docs talk, 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 when docs talk.
All right. Welcome to When Docs Talk. Hope everyone's having a wonderful Sunday. For those of you joining us for the first time, we are When Docs Talk, and we are a collaborative of medical practitioners and professionals, mainly emergency. And we basically have come together because we realized that there was a lot of subjects that you all want to talk about with your doc, but don't have the time and don't really always know how to ask your doctors. And so we became that medium for you to do so. But in doing so, we realized that doctors and the things you want to talk about with your doctors is not just about medicine all the time. Sometimes you want to know their thoughts on what's going on in the community because your health is obviously integrated with all the things going on in this world. And so here we are when docs talk. I want to start off by saying thank you to all of our viewers for helping us to get to over 2,000 subscribers on YouTube and over 6,000 followers on Facebook. We really appreciate it.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
So please remember, if you're watching us on Facebook, YouTube, make sure you like, share, subscribe. We want to also hear your thoughts. If there are any questions you have, if there are any things you want to see us talk about, please let us know. But let's go ahead and tell you who we are for those of you who are joining us the first time. Sonia, why don't you start off? I've been talking a lot.
So I am Dr. Sonia Penson. I am a family medicine physician who currently works in a ER urgent care setting. Originally from Georgia, born and raised. Also was in the Navy. So a Navy veteran, proud to say that. And so I'm just very thankful to be here tonight in order to celebrate our dads out there in the community. So yes, very thankful.
Wonderful. And so I am Dr. Adidiang Ipe Apo. I know that's a mouthful for some of you all. Some people call me Dr. Adidiang. Some people call me Dr. Didi, Dr. Ipe, whatever floats. But just call me. Say something to me. I like to hear from you. I am an emergency physician by training, also trained in internal medicine, double board certified. I mainly work in emergency settings, so I feel like I always have my finger on the pulse of whatever community I'm in, because in the ER, you see everything, everyone, all genders, all ages, all of it. And I'm happy to share my stories with you all. I'm happy to have discussions with you all. And so I want to just get right into our broadcast because, like Sonia said, we are honoring our men today. Shout out to all the men that we love. Yes. We want this episode to be about men, fatherhood, father figures, and of course, men's health. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. But we always like to start off with hot topics by the docs. We like to talk about what's going on in our world. Sonia, what's going on in your mind?
It was a couple of things, but I know we only have a short amount of time. And so tonight, I guess from the standpoint, we're going to be talking about men and men's health. And so I just saw in the headlines about Toby Keith, a country musician who just got diagnosed with stomach cancer. So Toby Keith, I'm not the biggest country music fan. I do like some, but he's one of those, I think, crossover figures that most people can recognize his name. And so he just shared that, you know, he had been battling it for the last 6 months with radiation, chemotherapy. And so I think from the standpoint of just when you have celebrities, stars, and that kind of stuff, it kind of humanizes them from the standpoint when they do have health issues. But I think also from the standpoint of knowing even they get health issues and need care, and maybe making people a little bit more aware of maybe saying, hey, I need to go be seen, check out the symptoms that I'm having. And so, from that standpoint, maybe make people think a little bit differently, maybe if they're sick and going to seek care and evaluation. So
Absolutely. No, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one thing that we're going to talk about a little bit, is that with men and men's healthcare, a lot of men don't interface the healthcare system.
yes.
So it's good to know that they were able to catch this. I'm really sorry. My prayers go out to Mr. Toby Keith. But things like this happen, and it's really important that we interface with the healthcare system. 21% of men admit to avoiding the doctor.
Yes.
And, little problems become big problems when we don't. So we're asking our men, our brothers, fathers, sons, everybody, take care of yourself, not at home. Come see us, right?
Exactly.
What was on my mind is last show. I want to thank everybody for watching our last show on gun violence and gun safety and the culture of firearms in America. To date, we have almost 100,000 views of that show, and people are continuing to watch it. I wanted to talk a little bit about the march that just occurred on Washington. I don't know if you're aware, Sonia, but there was a March for Our Lives, basically, where thousands and thousands of people went on Washington this past weekend, and they're basically demanding what we are advocating ourselves as doctors and advocates for public health: common sense gun safety rules. And when I say that, it means different things to different people. Some people hear gun control or gun safety or gun laws and automatically think we're talking about taking away people's guns. And I don't think that that's the case. I think most Americans want something just to make sure that we are not allowing guns into the wrong hands, while allowing law-abiding gun owners to protect themselves. There has to be a happy medium. I don't believe the narrative that it has to be one or the other, nothing or everything. And so I am praying that we will really get a handle on this issue, because I can't turn on the TV again and see something like Uvalde. I can't do that anymore.
Well, I'm hoping the right people saw the march and listened to it, because really at the end of the day, it's our Congress, and right now, I guess from the standpoint, and I think, we had discussed it a little bit, I think it's something has passed in the House, but, even with the Senate, they need to be held responsible from the standpoint of what's moving forward in this country. And that's what their job is, to take care of their job. And ensure our safety.
That's right.
Of the United States. So I am hoping that from the standpoint of, yes, I hope that they were the ones that saw that. And we need to really hold them to task to this.
Hold them to task, for sure.
Yes,
and sometimes you hear people talking like, oh, we just need more guns to make people safer. We just need the teachers to carry guns and everybody to carry guns. But when we did our poll last time, just to remind our viewers, when we asked our viewers, do they believe that more access to guns will make people safer? More people said no.
Exactly.
People don't feel like just having a bunch of guns in churches and grocery stores are going to make things better. So I agree with you. Hold them accountable. I also want to remind people that June is Gun Violence Awareness Month. We wear orange to commemorate that and to honor the lives of people lost in gun violence. And June is also Men's Health Month. Yes. So this is a perfect time for our discussion that we're going to have. Yes. Now, some of you who have been following us and watching us may notice somebody's missing. Somebody who's usually here is missing. And that's Dr. Yolanda Harrison. She's actually reaching out saying, hey, y'all, to our viewers. She couldn't be with us today because she is working. She is in the thick of seeing patients right now and had to be called into the urgent care that she works in. And so we are missing her, but she has sent us information so we can also make her a part of the discussion. Yes. And certainly she sent her tribute to the men in her life. So Dr. Yuli, we miss you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, we are going to jump into our discussion. So we're honoring fathers. And so we want to start off by actually honoring our own fathers and the men in our lives that have been so influential. So we're going to take a moment just to do a tribute to our fathers. Before we start, I want to tell you all that this is interactive. So if you're watching us from Facebook or YouTube and you love the men in your life, go ahead and type Yes, daddy. Go ahead and type it so we can see if you're with us. Okay, great. Yep, I see it. I see it coming in. Okay, wonderful. So let's go ahead and get started with a tribute to our fathers. Yep, I see you, Dania Hogbook. Daddy, yes, daddy.
Hey, Denia.
Oh, I said it wrong. I'm sorry,
Oh,
Denia.
it's Denia. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to start off with my daddy.
Yes.
I want to tell you a little bit about my daddy, Dr. Nsidibe Nelson Ipe. My daddy, Dr. Ipe, was born on February 18th in 1949 in Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria, West Africa. He left Nigeria in 1969 with nothing but a dream in his heart, few dollars in his pocket. When he arrived in the United States in the late 60s, he did odd jobs to sustain himself so that he could raise enough money for his education and to bring my mother, his wife, to the US. He worked with the Boy Scouts of America for 5 years, where he served as a scout leader, receiving many accolades from the organization. However, it was when he was working as a custodian in a psychiatric hospital that he actually considered the possibility of pursuing a career in medicine. So there he was in Iowa, working as a custodian, watching other people take care of patients. And can you imagine the gall of this young man all the way from Africa saying, I think I could do that. And he did. He absolutely did. By the late 1970s, my daddy became board certified in family medicine and surgery by the American Board of Osteopathic Medicine. And by the 80s, he decided to start his own clinical practice in Miami, Florida, becoming the founder and CEO of Legion Park Medical Center. In his lifetime, Dr. Ipe treated over 50,000 patients in the South Florida community, a number which does not include the thousands of patients he treated across the globe as the founder and CEO of the International Hospital Relief Foundation. Dr. Ipe touched many lives in his lifetime using this nonprofit organization, which he used to organize medical missions across the world. These countries included Nigeria and several nations in Central America and Asia. In these medical missions, they provided eye care services, general surgical care, and general medical treatment to thousands of indigent patients at no cost. He ensured that patients who would never have had access to such medical care received it through his foundation. Dr. Ipe's philanthropy was commended by several groups in the United States and abroad. Because of his diligence, hard work, and dedication, he was awarded the UNESCO Award, a prize awarded by the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. Dr. Ipe's life, awards, and contributions can never really be summed up in a few paragraphs. He was a hero to many, a man who came to the U.S. with nothing and worked hard to support himself, his family, his community, and the world community at large. He was a doctor, a husband, a father, a brother, a teacher, a businessman, a scholar, a friend, a philanthropist, and an inspiration to many. He single-handedly brought all of his brothers and sisters and several other Nigerians to the U.S. in the hopes of giving them the opportunities they may never have had. He really was never satisfied with helping himself alone. My daddy slept better at night when he knew everyone else had something to eat and a place to lay their heads. But when all the pomp and circumstance was gone, and it was just us, my daddy was the sweetest, kindest, funniest man you could ever imagine. He literally inspired the person that I am today. He spoke wisdom and power into all those who were in his reach, and especially into me, his little girl. My daddy used to call me his tiger, but he actually made me believe that I could fly, so I felt more like a unicorn in his eyes. In 2005, we lost my sweet daddy to multiple myeloma. I think about him every day. I miss him, I love him, and I regret that my children never got to meet this phenomenal human being. Father's Day has never quite been the same, but I honor him today, my daddy, Dr. Nsidibe Nelson Ipe, and I dedicate this show to him for the love of daddy.
For the love of daddy. So that's my daddy. Wanted to let you all know about him. We have a similar tribute from Dr. Yulee, but Sonia, I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about the men in your life.
Yes. So actually, I guess I'm fortunate. I had two fathers. And I was very blessed with that. My father, Ronald Pinson, he was, probably the first man I thought was the most handsome thing in the world, and I loved him to death. And we had a very complicated relationship, but he was away a lot when I was growing up. He worked abroad. He was a diesel oil mechanic. So he worked in Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Brazil. And so because of that, he wasn't able to take care of my sister and I. And my mother died when I was 8. And my sister was 6 years old at that time. And so we were actually living with my paternal grandparents at the time, my grandmother and my grandfather. And so they were the ones that actually raised us, my sister and I. But my father, he would come and visit and see us. And, and with that, it was difficult from the standpoint of, as children, you don't know the dynamics of adults and what's going on with them and why. It was always a question of why. Why aren't you here? Why aren't you present? And why is grandmother and grandfather taking care of us? And not really things. It was difficult to discuss to children at that time. And as we got older, just wasn't quite really. Prepared to talk and discuss with it. Unfortunately, he dealt with alcoholism. And he ended up dying at the age of 48. My first year of medical school. So that had to have been in 1992. And the thing is, I guess as I got older and I got a chance to really see him and kind of dissect some things and kind of see him for who he was. He was actually probably one of the most intelligent men I'd ever met in my life. He went to Morehouse for a year. He was a theology major. He was going to be a minister. And then Vietnam happened, and he ended up joining the Air Force he was trying not to get drafted into the Army. So he was trying to strategize maybe how could he be a little bit more safe in that situation. So he ended up joining the Air Force, and I guess just seeing the things that he saw over there, I don't know, my uncle always said he just wasn't the same after that. And I think that had impacted quite a lot of men of his generation. I think that's a very common story from the standpoint of men that had to go over there so young and the scars that they develop and having to come back to a society also at the time that was racist. Really wasn't wanting them to be part of society, as a Black young man. And so he found that difficult. And unfortunately, he used alcohol to kind of deal with that. But, even on his trips, he would come back and he would bring back Ulysses, say, hey, you need to read this. And it's like, yo, man, this is, Ulysses. Or, he read the Bible to completion. He read the Quran. He was really into world religions, as well as sci-fi. That's why my sister loves sci-fi so much, because, he just would, hey, you need to read all of Dune and all of that. So that's something that he really loved. And so, once again, it was complicated, but I really, from the standpoint of, I like to remember all of the positive things also that he brought to me
Yes.
into my life. And I think we had a picture.
We did, and that's what we're working on trying to get right here. I wanted you to talk a little bit about, because you talked to me about your father a lot. And I wanted you to tell me a little bit about the person who was more of a father to you.
Yes.
Because we are working on getting your father's picture up. I want everyone to see it. And I also am going to share the picture of your father's
grandfather. So my grandfather, but see, I think that's who everybody in my life remembers as my, the man of my life was my grandfather, Mr. Lamar Penson Sr. So my grandfather, once again, when my mom died, when I was 8, we were already living there with them. And so it was just kind of natural from the standpoint that my grandmother and grandfather took over. They ended up retiring. So they actually had all their time for us. And so things were tight. We didn't have a lot of money, from the standpoint of, he had Social Security. My grandfather, he was a sharecropper. They picked cotton. My father picked cotton,
Really?
Oh yeah. No, they picked cotton. They were sharecroppers. And then my grandfather made enough money to buy the house that he owned and the land. He bought it from one of the white farmers that own land there. And so he bought it from them. And actually it was the house that I grew up with, and was a revised shotgun house. So what that was it was like, you could you could shoot a gun straight through the house. And it was one on blocks, on stilts, even though they had reinforced it, but they had added a bathroom to it. So, we were lucky we didn't have to have, we didn't have an outhouse, but that's how country we were. And I always tell everybody I was one generation from picking cotton. But my grandfather, he farmed, but, any way to make money from the standpoint, he worked on the railroad, he worked on the roads, he worked on the bridges in Fayette County to help them to build. And then he finally got a job at the rock quarry. He was so proud of that, and he retired from there. So he had a little bit of a retirement check. They had Social Security, but one of the things that they prided themselves on was to make sure that that my sister and I had a normal life. It was about normalcy. So if we wanted to be in the band, we were in the band. If we wanted to participate in anything, field trips, they were going to make sure that they were going to get the money for us.
And I actually I'm going to go ahead and put your daddy and your sister and you. That is you over on the right-hand side.
Yes, that is myself and my sister Cheryl. Yes. And my father. Yes.
Okay. And then I see also a picture back here of your grandfather.
Yes. So that was my grandfather. And the thing was, he wasn't very talkative. He was a man of few words, but he loved to joke. He loved to laugh. And the thing was so great about him, he would laugh and cry. Anytime he laughed, he would just cry. Just go to tears automatically. And just the sweetest thing. I mean, I remember growing up, and we would put barrettes in his hair, climb all over him. Oh no, he would never fuss.
Yes,
and, and I just remember even, when I was younger, it was great having him around all the time. But I remember being a teenager, after a while, it wasn't cool having your grandfather around all the time.
We all know that stage.
Yes, and so he drove this Ford F-100 pickup, and he would go fishing, and then he would come by and pick my sister and I up from school. And so he would come early enough so he could hang out with the custodians at the school. And back then, our community was small. Everybody knew my granddaddy. So he could stop at the school, park in front of the buses, hang out in the school until we got ready to leave. And So I just remember I would be so embarrassed. And I'm just like, oh my God, granddaddy, what are you doing here? Because I would go to my last period and they'd be like, oh, your granddaddy's here. And I'm just like, oh, I would hide. And then when we would get ready to leave, my grandfather would drive 45 miles an hour.
Okay.
And then if you honked at him, he would drive slower with his blinker on.
So he's like, I'm going to take things on my time, basically.
Yes. And so I would hate it, but now I would do anything to have him drive me around in that pickup truck.
I'm sure.
You know, yes. And so unfortunately we lost him in 2006. You know, but he was 92. He lived the most awesome, great life.
Yeah.
And I know, and I'm just so thankful because I know I would not have been what I am today if it had not been for my grandparents that came in and filled in the gap for my parents. Yes. Very blessed to have him. And I'm hoping that he's looking down at me and that is proud of me.
I'm quite sure that he's proud of you. I am so thankful for you sharing your story. Dr. Yuli wanted to actually share her story about her father. She has a little tribute to him too, even though she couldn't be with us.
My dad is an amazing man. He is a 20 plus year Navy veteran. He is a 20 plus year retiree of the railroad system. And there has never been anything that I've needed that I did not get from this man. He has taught me everything from how to garden to how to take care of my car, how to barbecue. He has just instilled everything in me to make me the person that I am right now. I am thankful for my dad. And after having him here with me and him recently celebrating his 77th year of life, I'm just elated he gets to see his grandbabies. So I love you, Dad. Happy Father's Day.
All right, that was beautiful. So we want to bring on some of the fathers in our lives. Sorry, not the fathers in our lives. Guests who are fathers, who are going to talk about their lives as fathers.
Yes.
But we do this tribute to Father's Day, and I think I mentioned in my tribute to my dad, Father's Day has never quite been the same for me, but I always try and keep it upbeat and happy because I'm so thankful for the father of my children. And so Yolanda, Dr. Yuli, and I just wanted to give quick shout outs to our husbands for being wonderful fathers.
I've had the pleasure of marrying one of the best men I believe has ever existed, my husband, Justin. He has been my best friend, the man I needed and didn't realize I needed. He is an amazing father to our two children. The way I see him grow over the last 3 years since we've had our son has been amazing, and he's grown even more since we've had our daughter. I'm thankful for you, Justin. I love you. Happy Father's Day.
I want to wish a happy Father's Day to my dear sweet husband, Mr. Ubong Ekbo, father of my 3 boys, husband of over 16 years. Baby, I love you to the moon and back. Thank you for being such a wonderful father to my sweet little boys that I love with all my heart. When I see what a good father you are to them, a father who would do anything for them, who is striving to raise them to be honorable young men, it makes me fall in love with you all over again. Happy Father's Day to my baby, my husband, Ubong Ekbo. Love you.
All right. So Father's Day is next weekend. We just had to shout out the men that we love. But let's go ahead and bring on a couple of fathers that we are so honored to have today to talk a little bit about what fatherhood means, because fatherhood means a lot of things to different people. And fathers get a lot of, how should I say, a lot of a bad rap. especially in the Black culture. I feel like our fathers don't get their proper respect. And so let's bring on our host of guests that we have that are going to tell us a little bit about what fatherhood means to them and just discuss fatherhood in the context of fatherhood in 2022.
Yeah.
And we'll start off with our first guest. This is Reverend Kamau Welcher. He is the pastor of First Baptist Church, East Point. He is a dynamic preacher, teacher, pastor, and founder of an educational consulting company, Revelation Knowledge. Originally from Augusta, Georgia, Reverend Welcher earned the Ronald E. McNair Nassau full scholarship to Morehouse College and graduated cum laude with a bachelor's in mathematics. While at Morehouse College, he served as the chaplain of the Morehouse Student Government Association. He entered graduate studies at Emory University's Candler School of Theology. This has fostered diverse opportunities, including studying in Israel and Palestine with the World Methodist Evangelism Institute. Reverend Welcher has served as executive pastor of Green Forest Community Baptist Church, the pastor of students and families at Lake Oconee Community Church, and the director of the LOCC Green Putnam County Youth Alliance, as well as a teacher and minister at Stronghold Christian Church. Known as a man of integrity, Reverend Welcher has a life call to transform lives from the cradle to the grave. He provides counseling, staff development, and keynote address sessions in sacred and secular settings, and has served as the director of Young Adults Division, a teacher trainer, and an associate minister. While he was serving as a chaplain for Emory University's Wesley Woods Geriatric Facility, he worked directly with patients and families facing physical and mental challenges in mature stages of life. From PTA presidencies to coaching, he serves with passion while teaching and preaching with power. In fact, for a decade, Reverend Welcher taught mathematics in the DeKalb, Rockdale, and Gwinnett County school systems, drastically increasing the number of students who met and exceeded the standards of the CRCT end of course test, as well as the Georgia High School graduation exam. In fact, in his last year of mathematics teaching, 91% of his general education students passed at his Title I school. His creative and effective methods of teaching have earned various recognitions, and he is a certified math teacher trainer. He's also managed to win 3 basketball championships in his last 5 years of coaching, including a perfect undefeated season championship and a 28-2 record along the way. Reverend Welcher, a proud member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, is married to Dr. Adria Welcher, Director of General Education and Associate Professor of Sociology at Morehouse College. They have 4 wonderful children and make their home in the greater Atlanta area. Reverend Welcher states that he joins When Docs Talk for the opportunity to engage the community about this very important topic. We are delighted to have him with us today. Please help us welcome Reverend Kamau Welcher.
Welcome.
Amen. Thank you all so much. It is an absolute privilege and honor. Ladies, I have been, it's been humbling sitting back to watch you all rain love on the fathers and men of your lives. I am proud to be a part of a wonderful effort. Greetings.
Well, we are so happy to have you. Absolutely happy. Thank you for joining us.
Yes.
Okay. And so I have the privilege of introducing this next guest. So this is Dr. Stanley L. Trey Allen III. So he is an emergency medicine physician. He graduated with his bachelor's degree from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill in 1999. And subsequently, he received his medical doctorate from UNC Chapel Hill School of Medicine in 2003. He received his emergency medicine training at the University of Virginia Emergency Medicine Residency Program from 2003 to 2006. Dr. Allen has practiced emergency medicine in Texas and Georgia for over the last 16 years. In addition to practicing in the emergency department, Dr. Allen holds administrative roles as a lead physician in his group. He has been married to his wife, who is also a physician, for 16 years, and they have 2 lovely children together. Yes, they are gorgeous. 11-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter. The family also includes their Chihuahua Dachshund mix. Yes. And so Dr. Allen, he tells us when Docs Talk that he is particularly interested in joining us tonight for this discussion in order to share his experiences with others who value fathers and to learn from others' experiences with fatherhood. And so we are so happy to have him here tonight. And so I want everybody to help me to welcome Dr. Stanley Trey Allen.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor. Listening to and watching the stories about your dads is just inspirational. So glad I could see that.
Well, thank you for being here. And please know that you, in fact, all of you are an inspiration to others. Let's bring on our last guest. I am happy to introduce Mr. Victor Mbaba. He is a visionary leader and a pathfinder who has fully devoted his time and his talents to serving children in the United States of America, Africa, and the Caribbean. Orphaned and homeless at the age of 11 in his home country of Nigeria due to the Civil War, Mr. Mbaba was out of school for 3 whole years. He re-enrolled in school at the end of the war in 1970 and subsequently completed elementary and high school. With scholarships, he earned a bachelor's degree in 1983. Mr. Mbaba immigrated to the United States in 1984, where he earned 2 master's degrees in 1986 and 1993, respectively. Mr. Mbaba has used the pain of his early experiences to fuel his passion. He founded Africa's Children's Fund, a 501c organization, in 1993. His life history is an illustration of his belief that no condition in life is permanent and that people in need can become people who give hope to the needy. Victor's life lessons have inspired him to care for underserved and under-resourced children globally, most of whom have been abandoned by their families and communities or orphaned by war or even HIV/AIDS. He firmly believes that they, in turn, will help make the world better. He has also collaborated with many organizations and governments to provide care and resources to children in disaster areas all over the world. With all this, Mr. Mbaba is a humble man of repute who consistently does what it takes to help children and families in need. For almost 30 years, Victor and Africa's Children's Fund have raised over $15 million and provided food, scholarships, educational materials, housing, and countless other resources to over 250,000 children with their families across 17 countries. He proudly hosts the organization's signature fundraiser, Taste of the World, each November to raise awareness about the plight of children and the families he serves. His work is geared towards building a sustainable Africa that can effectively lead global impact through sustained efforts to support children and their family. His work creates opportunities for professional growth and development of life practitioners through medical, educational, and other professional exchange programs. The vision of Africa's Children's Fund has impacted children worldwide, from here in Atlanta to continental Africa, spanning countries from Nigeria, Ethiopia, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and South Africa, and even to include countries in the Caribbean like Haiti. Mr. Mbaba has received numerous awards and recognitions, including the prized Akwa Ibom State Association Award and the Ndito Anang Foundation Community Service Award from his community in Nigeria. He's also received the Diet Coke People at Their Best Award, the TBS Pathfinders Award, and the Concerned Black Clergy African Diaspora Award. In 2004, a CNN documentary portrayed Mr. Mbaba's work and his impact on HIV/AIDS interventions in Africa, along with the work of former South African President Nelson Mandela and the 42nd US President Bill Clinton. Mr. Mbaba is a longtime member of Christ Our Hope Catholic Church in Lithonia, Georgia. He and his wife, Margaret, are proud parents of 3 daughters and 4 sons: Mary, Christine, Emma, Ubong, Itoro, Michael, and Emmanuel. When we asked this visionary leader why he wanted to join our discussion, he replied that he is so concerned about the continuous rise in violence and wants to add his voice and action for a solution. And with this, we are honored to have him today. Please help me welcome Mr. Victor Mbaba.
Good evening, sisters and brothers. I am very honored, very happy to be here with you tonight. And it's even very heartwarming to see the care and the love that you, our sisters, continue to give to your family, to your men in your life, and men around you, which include us in this panel tonight. So we are excited, and I think I might be speaking to my other colleagues that we're really very humble, and we will do exactly what you want us to do tonight. Thank you.
All right. I love that. I love that. So why don't we just start out with the highlights? What do you love about being a father? Anyone can take this one.
I can start. What I love about being a father is it gives me the opportunity to really display affection and display love and display guidelines and all the things that a good father should do. Because if we think about a school or we think about the bigger communities, it really starts in the family.
Absolutely.
It really starts in the family. So that is why it is always our hope collectively that our families can continue to improve or be helped to improve. So the work of the father is important, to show that commitment and sacrifice. All these are the things of what it is to be a father, and the part that I like most.
I would echo the sentiments. I think that it's the privilege of practicing unconditional love. It's funny because in premarital and marital counseling, we often teach that if we can love our spouses the way we love our children, we don't have to worry about the marriage. Our children make mistakes. Our children can become dishonest at times. Our children can say some things that aren't quite true to get out of trouble. There's never a question of ending. There's never a question of walking away. It is a permanent, unconditional state of you're a part of me throughout. And so not only is it the opportunity to pour out legacy and to invest beyond yourself, but it's practicing the love of the Lord. It's practicing what it means to be a vessel of love, no matter what, and to just want what's best for someone else.
I love that.
Yeah.
What about you, Dr. Allen? What's the highlight of fatherhood for you?
I think it's just, especially at this age with my kids, it's just reliving my childhood a little bit and getting to enjoy just spending time with kids who are fantastic, who love you unconditionally, just want to be around you, do things with you. It just lifts your spirits to be around them. And it's a tremendous responsibility. I know, as they get older, our relationship will change somewhat, but hopefully I can be that role model that they need me to be and guide them in the right direction.
Absolutely. Let me tell you, Sonia, go ahead.
I was about to say that's very nice. And, I have the privilege of working with you. And so I get to see, I feel like your kids enrich your life so much because, he comes in, he's got his phone ready. With whatever little video they do, their soccer games. And then I think Lena stole your phone once and just made these cute videos and that kind of stuff. But they were so sweet, But the thing is, I can see how much joy that it brings you. And I think that's the most awesome thing about it,
Absolutely. Even look at all of their faces, actually, when they start to talk about fatherhood. Yes. Every single one of them just lights up, starts smiling. It brings a joy to a man. And let me tell you, it brings the same joy to a child. So all of us have fathers. regardless of how involved our fathers were in our lives, we came from somebody, right?
Mhm.
And so I just want to let you all know, and let and let our viewers know how much we grow and become better people from the fathers in our lives,
Yeah.
or the father figures.
Mhm.
But I want to kind of bring in a little bit of controversy, because we have to be real. We talk a lot about fathers and how much we loved our fathers and how much you all love being fathers. But there's also a lot of negative stereotypes surrounding fathers, specifically Black fathers. And I feel like some of it is undeserved. And I want you all to speak a little bit about, not only the triumphs and challenges of Black fatherhood, but also some of the negative stereotypes, because a lot of fathers in our community, and this is by no means exclusive to the Black community, but let's just talk about that since we're on it, are accused of not being there, or accused of not giving what they need to be. And so please tell me a little bit about your thoughts on those matters.
Well, it looks like I'm going to go start again like I started. Well, I think one of the things that comes to my mind is whether truly we want to compare. And because that question might evoke that we are trying to compare Black fathers to other kinds of fathers. And in trying to do so, we might ignore a few things, the history of us as Black people in
That's
the
right.
United States.
Mhm.
If we ignore that and compare, then we're making some mistakes.
Mhm.
But also the experiences of Black fathers might not be the same. Our culture. And so I would like to approach this by really helping all of us to try to understand ourselves and our culture more. And that's one point. And then two, that's a four-letter word that we said earlier, that love, to also remember that, because the moment I think about love and somebody remind us that it's not an emotional stuff, that love is really something that you display to someone, whether that person is good or bad, changes or none at all. And so if that is the case, we have to love our fathers, and we have to stick, and we have to always make rooms to improve and change together if we want to do so. So that's a stereotype, and because like Dr. Ipepu introduced me by making my statement that no condition is permanent in life, and truly it isn't. So we've seen fathers who struggle and they improve, and we see other people who were doing well and they regress. Life is such. So I would like to encourage us to display love, to know who we are, and stop comparing ourselves, and just doing the best we can, so that we can. It's almost might look like we're putting cotton wool in our ears. We don't hear whether somebody is giving us the stereotype or not, because we're doing what we're supposed to do. We're praying to God to help us, to help ourselves and our families and people around us. I think what I'm saying here is probably the way I'm looking at life.
I love it. It sounds like you're saying block out the noise and just do what you have to do. Don't worry about what people are saying.
Yeah.
Any thoughts from any of our other men?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think a lot of these negative stereotypes have been remnants of even, slavery times, as you mentioned, just Black people, men in particular, as being, dangerous and, criminals, and these thoughts about us that aren't really fair. And I think that, what I've tried to do in my life was just really look at the men around me that I interact with on a daily basis, my dad in particular, my grandfather, gentlemen, professionals, kind-hearted, would do anything to protect their family. that was my reality. And I think there's messaging sometimes that doesn't highlight that aspect of our community enough. And that's why I'm so thankful that you're doing this type of show. I definitely think there's a void. And, we need to crowd out those negative messages and ideas with
Yes,
more positive images.
completely agree.
I agree, and I appreciate the acknowledgement of both sides. You can't deal with the symptom or the leaves of the tree without talking about the roots. And the truth is about our nation, there have been multiple mega million dollar industries for which a part of the fuel that drove the train was the destruction or separation of our families.
Yes.
A part
Yes.
of what made
Yeah.
domestic slave trade work was the division and the elimination of the family structure. A part of what feeds into even our prison industrial complex now,
Yeah.
and the quote unquote war on drugs, is the incarceration or the separation of men from their children. And that those are not symptoms that evaporate in one generation.
Mhm.
However, I think for many of us, our reality prevents us from adopting the ignorance of the stereotype. My father grew up, he would have been valedictorian of his high school, but he went over and agreed to integrate the Academy of Richmond County his senior year, and going through all kinds of untold stories. He received a full scholarship academic to Notre Dame, was a math major. So even as I became a math major, I'm second generation. And even now, as my daughter received a full scholarship to Spelman as a math major, it's third generation. We're all walking in the legacy of my father. We're walking in legacy. So it's difficult for me to sometimes watch how, if you haven't experienced being around, absorbing the godly, loving, wonderful men of our community, you can
Yes.
adopt the caricature that is presented on our television screens or in videos or in spaces. So I think our presence is a part of the solution. That just being around, seeing truth sometimes prevents you from being able to be influenced by ignorant lies on screen.
Absolutely. What about our single mothers who don't have the opportunity to really expose their children to a stable, regular male figure, say on a daily basis? I mean, there are some such situations where you might have a single mother who they have a very strong partnership, but there are some single mothers who really don't have that father figure for their children. How would you recommend that they navigate raising a young man or even a woman who we can all agree women need their daddies?
Hmm.
Well, again, very pragmatic to say this. And I took a look at some of our best football players in this country. I took a look at some of the best basketball players in this country, or people in televisions and whatnot. What I want to say is God has given every one of us resource,
Mhm.
whether that is your own dad or another man that can be a part of your life. Mentoring, sports, and the rest of other things. These are some of the ways that our young men, young boys, and even girls, as you mentioned, can be connected to men that can influence them, mentor them, even as part of their own profession. They probably didn't set out to say, I'm going to change somebody's life, but they knew they wanted to coach somebody in soccer or in football. But in doing so, they changed that person's life wholly. And so our sisters need to be helped to know that this resource is there.
Yes.
So a 5-year-old is enrolled in a soccer clinic or football and all that. They have men that are coaching them and working with them. And of course, 100 Black Men of Atlanta, America, also helping in mentoring, even yours truly. As I'm speaking to you this summer, I'm running 6 camps.
Oh,
6 summer camps in Metro Atlanta, 3 in Gwinnett, 2 in DeKalb, and 1 in Clayton County, where we want to ensure that children don't stay home alone. Because I had a very unpleasant experience
Mhm.
that I just hired a young lady, and not knowing that because she didn't quite get a paycheck yet, she was leaving her 10-year-old daughter at home after school alone. And when I realized that, I changed that immediately. And of course, we had the privilege to secure resources and run 6 camps. So opportunity to embrace what is also around. And it goes to that stereotype again. So we have to help our community so that our ladies appreciate the men around them who may be coaches, mentors to children, so that all these stereotypes that we heard earlier, that should be out of the door, according to our Reverend Welcher. So,
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned Reverend Welcher, because you were talking a lot about coaches and camps and so forth. And some of you may not know, but the way that I even met Reverend Welcher was as a coach of my son's basketball team. So it sounds like, it's really an important resource for all women, but certainly for single women who may not have a direct father figure in their children's lives. And I wanted Reverend Welcher to talk a little bit about coaching and the influence on those who may not have a steady father figure.
Yes, yes. And her son was pretty good too. I want to let you all know that it is not just a mother talk. It was a great. Listen, you all, it's community, it's village, and I love that, as you said, Brother Baba. It's a very practical answer, but it's intentional in order for us to take advantage of the resources. And we can just sit home and stream services all day and allow our children to simply do video games. And it takes the intentional step, as particularly now that we are out of a pandemic, of ensuring that our children are a part of systems where positive influences, relationships with one another, and men have to stand on the wall. It's funny because I thought both about coaching and there's several, and it's not to be controversial, but in many biblical settings, or when you're reading Old Testament structures, it's societies where there's no such thing as the word orphan, like it couldn't exist. There was also, and you would get into things like a kinsman redeemer, but no matter what, if something happened to a father, there was another man whose responsibility it was to ensure that those children had all the resources, that legacy was kept, so that the lineage would lean on. So both for fathers, there's no such thing as being a good father only to your children. If you're not investing in their friends, in network, in loved ones around them, whether it's through mentoring, in coaching, in brotherhood programs, in fatherhood programs, we have to be a part of that. And as mothers and fathers take advantage of the programs, it's reciprocity. To be honest, we're better men when we're coaching. We're better men when we're fathering. We speak better. We use better language. When we're around the children who we want to see excellent examples. So I think that's a very practical, but an excellent example of how we can help not only single mothers, but all of us as parents, ensuring our children are plugged in to excellent organizations. And coaching has been a blessing to my life. You're able to transform lives in a very intimate way, and strengthen not only with skills on the court, but in growth of manhood, responsibility, team. You can't limit the number of life lessons you can learn. And young men actually respond better when they're being trained physically. There's just something about it. They can hear you a little better. There's a baseline involved. Amen.
Absolutely. I'm gonna throw a question to Dr. Allen, because we talked just now about how we can support single mothers, or even support just women in general as fathers, even if you're not fathers. And I love the answers that you are giving, because basically you are making a point or a plea to men to be fathers, not just to their own children, and making a plea that this is not only beneficial for the children and for the families, but beneficial for you. I love, Reverend Welcher, that you talk about how you speak better. You are a better man when you are actively mentoring and coaching other children. So now, Dr. Allen, The flip side of that, I want to talk about, and one thing before I flip it, I want to give a shout out to all the single fathers out there, because there are single fathers out there that are working very hard to raise children by themselves, and I think that they are grossly uncredited. And so that's my personal commendation towards them. But what can we as women do to support our men?
Excellent question. I think definitely words of encouragement go a long way. Just making sure that, whatever the man in your life is trying to accomplish, you're reassuring them that, I have your back, I'm here for you. When you're down, I'm going to lift you up. That partnership, that mutual respect, I mean, it really goes a long way. And, that you can never give enough appreciation for another person. So I think that really carries a lot of weight.
Yeah. And then what a great way to show your children how to bond and to have relationship is by the parents and how you're working together in making something. I think that was the best thing that I ever saw was with how my grandparents worked together and how they helped. I don't think they would have had what they had if they had not had each other, the way they worked together. But they could not have had it. I don't think if they were trying to work against each other or fighting against each other, So no, that's great.
Yeah, I had a similar experience with my own parents, actually. My dad's a dentist, and he was at Howard in dental school, and my mom was in grad school there. And he told me, the first year is really having a tough time and even considering quitting. And my mother, they weren't married at the time, but she was just like, that's ridiculous. You can accomplish anything you set your mind to. Like, she believed in him, believed in himself.
Yes.
And they wound up working together for decades in his dental office. And there's no way he could have achieved his dreams without her. And I'm just so grateful for her. She passed away a few years ago, but she was instrumental in his life and my life. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry to hear about her passing away, and I definitely love that she encouraged him. I think we underestimate how important it is to speak words of power and support into each other, but especially into our men. I really think that, men often, and this is not just a stereotype, even most psychiatric societies and psychological societies will say they don't talk about their feelings as much, and they're socialized to believe that they're supposed to be strong at all times and they don't really need anything from others. But the truth of the matter is, just speaking in to our men and giving them that encouragement and being there for them, I think makes a difference. I'm going to switch gears a little bit after a quick break, because I want us to talk a little bit about men's health. And one of the things that come to my mind, I see our producers put up about depression in men. We have to talk about men's mental health and supporting our men emotionally. But first, I want to just make you all aware. I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but we do know that the leading killer, the number one cause of death in our country is heart disease. And this is for men and women, but men are far more likely to experience heart disease than women. And so I want to make you aware of a webinar on heart health that's taking place tomorrow. One of our previous guests from When Docs Talk, Dr. Omar Danner, is going to be one of the panelists. But it basically is a talk about, everything you'd want to know about the number one killer in America, heart disease. So if you're interested in joining, go ahead and check us out on WDT on our Facebook or Instagram or even YouTube page, and we'll have the details as to how you can join. All right, so let's talk health. We talked about fatherhood. We love the fathers. We talked about how important it is. We talked about the challenges and the things that we can do. Now we got to talk about keeping these fathers alive, right? How are we going to optimize men's health and wellness? So in doing so, I just want to talk about some of the top health issues for men. We know, looking at CDC and other public health data, that high blood pressure, hypertension, as it's also known, affects far more men than women, 51% of men versus 40% of women. Heart disease, we already talked about, is the #1 killer in the United States and worldwide, but men are twice as likely to have a heart attack. Obesity is a problem that we have throughout this country, men, women, and unfortunately even in children. But stats show us that up to 78% of US men are either classified as obese or overweight versus 69% of women.
Mhm.
And cancer seems to be something that scares a lot of people. That's actually the second leading cause of death in the United States. Men are typically more likely to die from cancer. And although we think about prostate cancer, because that's a very specific cancer to men, obviously women don't have prostates, the #1 cancer that kills men is actually what? Does anyone know? It's actually lung cancer.
Mm.
It's actually lung cancer. So most lung cancers are caused by smoking, although there are some that have no relation to smoking. But another thing that men should be aware of in terms of their health is diabetes, the sugars, as some people call them. Age and weight are risk factors, but there is a higher prevalence in men. And then the last thing on the list is really important because accidental injury or poisoning is another top men's health concern. And if you look at that, there's so many deaths caused by injury. And under that category, you look at the number of firearm deaths, it's actually more deaths from firearms than it is, say, from motor vehicle accidents. And there's one psychologist, Dr. John Tholen, who says that many of the health risks that disproportionately affect young men involve self-inflicted injury caused by risky behavior or accidental injury. So it's really important for us to mentor our young men, like we were talking about, in order to have them involved in less risky behaviors. So we talked a little bit about all these health problems and so forth. How can we get guys to the doctors?
Well, I think it starts out with health insurance, having access to health care. A lot of times that's tied to employment, and, that can be a challenge a lot of times for our men. So, that's step one. I think, when you do find a doctor, it's nice to find one you can trust, you have a good rapport with. There's a lot of justifiable mistrust of the medical system, I think, in our community based on past experiences. So, trust is critical. And just letting men know that taking care of yourself is going to allow you to take care of those that you care about.
There we go.
For the long term. So you got to make yourself a priority.
Yes.
And that can be challenging sometimes. There are a lot of competing priorities in our lives, but, health has to really be a high one.
Absolutely. I have to be honest, a lot of times when we were doing our research and also just in our personal experience, Dr. Sonia, you can tell me if you experienced it too, but a lot of times men don't go to the doctor unless there's a major problem. Yeah. And one of the issues that will sometimes bring men into the doctors is when it comes to men's sexual health. So a lot of times men will finally see the doctor when there's a major problem. And if they are having problems with either erectile dysfunction or low libido or low testosterone, which they wouldn't know, they may just be experiencing symptoms that come from low testosterone. That's the first time that they may interface with the medical system. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting when we bring these up because, for instance, if a man is having problems with erectile dysfunction, a lot of times it's a medical issue. It's not always a psychological issue.
Well, and that's just it, because a lot of times from that standpoint, it's because they had hypertension and they didn't get it treated because it wasn't bothering them.
Right.
Or, or
a silent killer, right?
Exactly. Well, yeah. And, or, from the standpoint of the diabetes, once again, it wasn't that bad at that time, or I don't believe, you hear it all the time too. I don't believe that, they told me that,
right.
But I don't know if I believe that or not.
Right. Right.
But then by the time they come in, they've already started having complications, and definitely that's the one that gets them in, though. That's the one that gets them in. Is when it doesn't work as well as it should.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, Dr. Ipepo. Okay.
No, please go ahead. Please go
I
ahead.
just want to add something. I know you asked a very important question. How do we get the men to go to the doctor?
Yes. How?
And I'm not a medical doctor, but I just want to use some small strategy that we have used in our house, my wife and I.
Please.
So we try to make it like we're going out for a date kind of thing.
Going out for a date?
So
Yeah.
let me explain how that works.
Please explain it, because I'm trying to make this connection with healthcare.
Okay. This is how it works in my household. My wife does not go to see our doctor alone. I go with her, so that when I go, she comes with me. And oftentimes, of course, my wife is in the medical field. She asks questions. And I just use common sense when I go to ask questions when the doctor, our own doctor, is talking to her. And we usually take a 9 o'clock appointment or 8:30. So when we finish, we go eat breakfast and go home.
Oh.
It has worked for us. So I mean, if something simple like this, whether it is girlfriend and a man or wife and a husband, but something like this can become like a lifestyle.
I love that. I have never heard. Let me tell you something. I always see women bringing their men into the doctors most of the time when they come
That's
in.
what I was about to say.
But I have never heard this proposed date at the doctor. I love it. All the feels.
Increases trust too.
Yes.
And I want to say, because I love the numbers. You know, some of those are just humbling to see the actual statistics when it comes to the diseases and the higher impact in men. But it's funny because habits, whether good or bad, are hard to break. Yes. And I would just encourage, and it's one of the things we've encouraged in my congregation as well. When the pandemic hit, it backed up or stopped a lot of the annual practices or the consistent preventive or reasonable care practices that we had, because it was really only COVID related items that were going, and members were really scared to go to any medical facility for a while. If I may catch COVID if I go. And so we had members who were getting a physical annually, but have stopped over the last 2-3 years and haven't caught up with their colonoscopies or their screening processes, all of the items that were every 2 years or every 5 years or every 10 years. So just kind of as a public service announcement to all of us to get back into those healthy habits, so that we don't have to wait until there are problems in the bedroom to draw us in to the doctor.
If I tell you how much I'm thanking you both for your words, thank you for that public service announcement. It's important. It's one thing coming from us as healthcare providers and professionals, and a different thing coming from you. And I'm telling you, that dating at the doctor thing, I'm taking with me and spreading it far and wide, Mr. Baba. Absolutely. I have to bring this up because this is something that's often not spoken about, and that's part of the problem. And this is with men and women. Mental health has been getting a lot of attention lately. It's been blamed on the gun violence and everything. I want to talk about mental health and how it looks in men. So the 5 common mental health issues in men include depression, anxiety, substance abuse disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, which I've seen in lots of my veteran patients, and bipolar disorder. And another thing about mental health is that we should know that our men have higher rates of suicide deaths than women, and higher rates of substance abuse are less likely to discuss their feelings and more likely to attach a stigma to mental illness. So weigh in on this for me, men. What is it about men and mental illness, and how do you think we can make some headway when it comes to this issue?
Yeah, I think we really have to remove the stigma to getting help, and make people feel like that's a sign of strength, because it is. I mean, I think old mentality of tough it out, or if you ask for help as a man, that means you're weak. It's just not productive. And I think we need to change just the way we approach supporting the men in our lives and getting help when they have issues.
I just want to add something that, of course, some of us just came the other day from Africa. But you might think about what our forefathers, 400 years, 200 years ago suffered and they use their faith and religion to overcome most things in their life. Of course, you take a trip to Nigeria, what we went through in the Civil War and all that. So I am thinking that another area that our sisters can help our men is just not to be passive when it comes to encouraging them. I'm using the word encouraging because you can't make anybody to do something. Because I often hear, I just asked a sister today at church, what is your husband? Oh, he said he's tired. He didn't want to come. Yeah, and so you see in a church, in brothers' church here, 75% of the pews are women, and 25% are men. But what this the church experience give us human is that encouragement, you know, and will help us increase our faith to where some of these mental health issue might become minimized. So I'm really, you know, chiming in, looking at the role of religion and faith in helping our men, and what role our women can play in creatively encouraging the men to join them as they go to church or other houses of worship.
Yes.
So that might be something that is important, you know, to think about.
I know the Reverend's like, yeah.
I love it. I love it. And so one, he's absolutely right that across multiple nations, not just ours, we are almost always majority females in church services, in worship services. And that's from south to the north. It is very rare to go into a church and see more men than women in that service.
Reverend, why do you think that is? And I might be cutting in, but yeah, why do you think that is?
So it would take another show.
That's
but,
right.
but no. That I can tap into it. There is, as we mentioned, sometimes certain parts of our character are encouraged and others aren't. A part of that sensitivity and spiritual, the sensitivity to emotion, or the willingness to follow, or the openness to spiritual and emotional experiences are often sometimes trained out of the ego or the bravado of male experience. And because it's been so many generations, it's deeply rooted, but it's not an insurmountable problem. We can get brothers in the church. And I really wanted to just affirm that it is a complementary, not a combative relationship when we look at faith and health. Because, as he said, we've seen, and we've taught in studies that how forgiveness exercises literally can lower blood pressure, can lower just practices in the forgiveness and release. We've seen the tangible now. So it's almost, yes, prayer can tangibly change the numbers that your doctor receives. We are literally watching what is intangible become tangible, but also to dispel some of the myths, to recognize that as we pray and have faith, you are not showing a lack of faith when you see a mental health professional. That we pray and we know in our faith we have a savior who can heal a blind man, who can take mud and rub it on eyes and let the blind see. That does not mean that I lack faith when I wear my glasses to drive. So it is okay to pray, believe, and receive the professional care, or if there are chemical imbalances, to see how God can work through the medical community so that none of our members feel that I'm not showing an appropriate reverence to God if I go to a psychologist. So I can pray, believe, walk on faith, allow all of these wonderful benefits of our faith community, and follow in the excellent advice of my health professionals. So I think for us, particularly in our community, because, and I think, Doc, you mentioned it earlier, access was there. When there wasn't insurance, we dealt with it how we had to deal with it. And so for generations, prayer was what we had. And if you had different issues, you went to the pastor for all of them. Well, now we are still open and there, but we also have a list of referrals when there are specific mental health challenges that in which the professional community can complement your walk with the Lord.
I love that. And I love that you're saying that, because I think Sonia and I, Dr. Penson and I, were talking about a lot of times there's stigma around mental health and nobody wants to see a psychiatrist or a therapist, but they're okay going to their pastor. They're okay coming to their church. And so the fact that you recognize that, and that nowadays in the church, you're saying that you will make those referrals and you will work in tandem with our mental health specialists, that really warms my heart, because I think that that's what's necessary. I want to talk a little bit.
One
sorry,
more thing
please go ahead.
I just didn't want to miss it. It's in certain instances of violence, we'll hear commentary of thugs or gangs. And then when others commit violent acts, we all of a sudden hear the commentary of mental health and the challenges and the problems. And sometimes it's just the body or the skin tone of the person committing the act of violence. And if we're honest, we've got a problem, like a virus or an epidemic of violence in this nation that is very unique to this nation. And I am glad that we're entering the conversation of mental health, but I don't want us to sometimes hide. I don't want there to be an elephant in the room that ignores the fact that when the mental health discussion only seems to appear when certain people commit acts of violence, even if we're dealing with violence that is rampant here and is nowhere else on the planet. We're dealing with folks that are no one else is sending their babies to school and having to do an extra session of prayer and oil and Psalm 91, wondering whether their child will be shot randomly in their elementary school. But so I am applauding it, but I do want us to recognize that sometimes there's a selective application to this. Wait a minute, there may be mental health challenges here. That should be something that's open, no matter who the quote unquote perpetrator of that violence is.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes, I love that you said that. We like to keep it 100 here. When it's Black people or people of color, it becomes violence and evil. And when it is a person of a lighter persuasion, a white person, you hear about mental illness. And you're right, that is something we really need to examine, those discrepancies. I want to, before I have you all leave some last words with our viewers, just empower our men by giving them some healthy living tips that are very specific to our men, but actually, can be employed by our women too. What can you do? So we talked about all the things that men are more vulnerable to, more susceptible to, and it can be kind of depressing, like, oh my gosh, I'm a man, I'm going to have all these things, right? But brothers, you can combat this. You can take your health into your own hands. Sleeping well, 7 to 9 hours daily, very hard to do in our hustle and bustle society, but you got to do it. It's like medicine. Moving more, once again, like medicine. There are people who exercise 30 minutes a day. They've done studies that show that this lowers, even if you're a diabetic, can lower your sugars almost as effectively as insulin in many cases. Taming stress. So we're talking about doing enjoyable activities, listening to music. They've done studies on that. That helps with stress levels. Considering mental health specialists, as some of our guests have suggested. You got to eat to thrive, okay? We know you love the steaks and the burgers and so forth sometimes, but at least half of that plate needs to look green and grow from the ground, okay? Or a tree, fruits and veggies. We also encourage you to drink water. We love the juices and the sodas and all this stuff. And the nowadays it's the energy drinks, Red Bulls and stuff to keep us going. Let's go back to water, lots of it. Get regular checkups. We talked about this ad nauseum. We're going to say it again. Go on a date. As Victor and Baba said, you got to catch small problems before they get bigger. So we've got to get into the healthcare system. If there is no access or a health insurance issue, look in your town. There is usually a community or county health resource and ask for help. You're not conditioned to do this. Most men are not socialized to do this. But when you need help, ask. If it needs to be another man, if it needs to be your partner, whoever it is, just feel free to ask. Those are our healthy living tips that we highly recommend. I have really loved having you all and learned so much from our discussions. What I want to ask you all is what kind of take home or last minute pearls you have for our viewers.
I'm going to start, but I'm going to have word for you, the producers. The word I want to have for you is I want to make sure with the beautiful and powerful message that you have, that you actually have the best medium to propagate it, and not just for the elitists that might sign up to your Facebook and all that. What I'm sitting down here and I'm thinking the role of the barber shops. You know, but you go to barber shop, you that's where you watch Michael Jordan and all this football, and because they are conversing and they all day long. And nice commercial come, they stop and look. How about a 5-minute stop on this kind of issue? Just a thought. Just a thought.
No, I think it's a great thought. Finding the medium to reach out to the most people, right?
Yes.
People who might not have access to the internet or Facebook, but everyone's going to get their hair cut or something like that. And it's a community, especially in the Black community. You go to the salon, you go to the barbershop, that's a whole community. And a lot of great discussions happening there. So thank you for that discussion.
Yeah. And I'm going to do one word for our audience. What I want to tell our audience is make life simple. Just very simple. You know? You married, cook for your wife too.
Ooh, I love that. You're coming with all the suggestions.
You racking it up, Victor. Yeah.
He goes to work, he comes back at home, food must be ready. Do these kinds of things. Blood pressure way down.
Yes. I love it. Thank you so much, Mr. Mbaba.
All right.
Reverend, what do you want to leave with our viewers?
You know, I in like fashion want to encourage you all. I will be dropping back by to hear what happens, see what happens when doctors talk. It always reminded me of scripture. When my people who are called by my name will humble themselves. You just when families pray together, when families care together. So I love the conversation, and thank you all for honoring dads and taking the time. And I think what I would leave is just kind of seize the day. That many times we know what we ought to do, but we kind of convince ourselves a slower day is coming. So yes, I'm going to spend that time with my kids. I'm going to, oh, you know what? After a while, we're going to start reading together. You know what? I'm going to check that homework. We're going on camping trips. We're going to do this. And we convince ourselves that there's some slower day coming down the line in which we will live our greatest life. And so I would just encourage us the same way we do in all of our careers. Like any, there are short-term, long-term, multi-year goals that lay those out and do them with your families. At the beginning of the year, set goals for how we'll do quality time, what trips we'll take, what books we'll read, and give yourselves reward along the way. Kind of treat it as if I need to do it this week if I want it to happen. And I think that as we take advantage, living our best selves, literally, if we change those we see enough, even without the internet and all the rest, if we change 12 people well enough, they'll be talking about us in 2,000 years.
Yes. Your lips to God's ears. Amen. I love it. Thank you, Reverend. Dr. Allen, tell our viewers what you want them to know.
Yes. Well, I would say for the fathers out there, you know, be proud of the contribution that you're making in your kids' lives. You know, we don't hear that feedback enough, but you're really making a difference. You know, hang in there, whatever obstacles come your way. You know, just support other fathers and look for support from other dads. And, you know, just know that what you're doing has an impact.
It sure does.
Yes.
It absolutely does. I thank you all for joining us. We're going to have just a few closeout words from myself and Sonia in a minute, but Reverend Welcher, Mr. Mbaba, Dr. Allen, you all have been phenomenal. You are an inspiration to me and have given me lots of good insight. And believe me, you have touched somebody out there. We would love to have you back again sometimes. And I also want to say to you, Happy Father's Day next week.
Thank you so much.
Happy Father's Day to all of you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right. And so, Sonia, I have loved talking about daddies, and I've loved talking with these daddies. These particular fathers are so insightful. I'm telling you, you know, from date night at the doctor's to, you know, being a better person, human being, when you coach and mentor other people as a father, to just respecting and enjoying your children, like Dr. Allen was suggesting, and being proud of yourself as a father. I love it.
Yes.
What do you want to leave with our viewers as we close for good?
I loved even the discussion, though, about the community and the village. I really feel like we really need to go back to that. And it doesn't even have to be a huge village, you know, just what they were saying, you know, like one or two, the 12, you know, from the standpoint, if we could just reach a few at a time, you know, and connect and help one another, encourage one another. I think that is so important. But I think we take it for granted and minimalize that. You know, and so I think really from the standpoint, and even what Trey was saying at the end, you know, I'm hoping that men will see this and really encourage one another. Because I think it's one thing too, if we talk or we say something as women to men and speaking to their lives, but I think when they have other men to help each other, to mentor to each other, to commiserate, you know, I really feel like that is very important.
Yes, yes.
And I'm hoping, you know, people will look at this and say, you know what, maybe we need to do these things.
Yes. And there are so many organizations, I'm going to say that there are so many organizations that people are not aware of where men can connect, because there's nothing like, I believe there's nothing like a woman's love. I think that a woman's love can really make a man fly, but I don't think anybody can teach a man in the same way another man can.
Exactly.
And so hearing these brothers speak today, I really got that sense that, you know, there needs to be a community of men uplifting each other as fathers. There are men who are struggling to even see their children because of whatever family dynamics, and our heart goes out to them. But for those fathers that are present and showing up every day and loving their children and loving the mothers of their children, I give a special shout out, because I do believe that when children see a man who loves their mother, I'm telling you, it does something. It does something to those.
It makes a difference.
It makes a difference. I just want to close by thanking all our viewers for tuning in. Make sure if you didn't catch the whole episode, you can catch us on YouTube or Facebook. We upload our old episodes there. And I want to take one more opportunity to wish all the fathers, grandfathers, father figures, any man out there who is doing something to enrich a child, mentor a child, I want to wish you a happy Father's Day. I want to thank you for what you do. We love you here at WDT, and we will see you all next time. Take care.
When dogs talk, when dogs talk, when dogs talk, when dogs talk. When dogs talk, when dogs talk.